The applicant shall be given a rebuttal period. The public hearing will be closed and no further testimony will be accepted. The normal procedure is that the board will discuss and take action on the application. All meetings of the board are open to the public. Anyone in the audience who thinks that for any reason they will speak before the board tonight, please stand and take the oath. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth in all matters pertaining to the cases before the Board of Adjustment? Please say, I do. Thank you. Please be seated. Okay. Roll call. Aaron Crosley.
Here.
Jack Lehman.
Here.
Robert Jones.
Here.
Roy Brown.
Here.
Tim Watkins. I'm here as well. Okay. First case this evening. Do we need to continue this?
Oh, the applicant's actually withdrawn that case, so there's nothing to continue. It's just done.
Okay. All right. Well, the first case we're going to hear tonight then is 21-999-13.
Yes, this is an application of Judy Whitty that seeks to construct a garage in her rear yard on the northwest corner of Truman Road in North Pleasant. As Truman Road is considered a highway by the city's thoroughfare plan, the required setback for any building is 50 feet from the south property line, which is Truman Road. She proposes to build a garage only 18 feet from the south property line. A variance of 32 feet is required. This garage she seeks to build is a 24 by 24 foot double car garage. We'll go through some slides here. This shows the general location of the application there on the northwest corner. Hang on just a minute. This is the zoning for the area. As you can see, this is a property zoned to R6 single family residential. You've got some spots of multifamily in this downtown area, such as the church across the street, and then the Truman home to the southwest of there. There's an alley on the west side of the property, Pleasant on the east side of the property, and then Truman Road on the south. This is the aerial of the site in pink. You can see the house faces North Pleasant. It's got a side property line along the Truman Road. Behind is here is mislabeled as McCoy Street. That's actually further down. This is an alley. And there's a church immediately to the, you can see the parking lot there to the east across Pleasant Street. This is the, unfortunately this slide was slightly cut off. The property's at the very bottom of the slide there. This is the same thing that was included in your packet, so you're familiar with it. This is the site plan drawn by the applicant that shows the existing house as it faces Pleasant, which is on the right, and Truman Road on the south, and the alley on the rear. And that's the place where the new garage would be constructed, about 18 feet from the south property line. It'll have a driveway from the alley east into the new garage. This is the house itself. You've probably driven by it 100 times on Truman Road. Pretty good, typical historic look for the neighborhood. Here we're at the southwest corner of the property, looking somewhat to the east and northeast. This is the rear yard. The garage would be sort of in the middle of the yard there. This is another picture here. We're looking from the northwest to the southeast Again, roughly in the middle of the yard is where that garage would be. We're here in the alley, so your driveway, double driveway would go from here to the garage. Here we're across the street on the south side of Truman Road, looking slightly northwest to the property. Again, the garage would be probably in a similar situation to where that garage is there that's on the property north of this. Well, at least from this vantage point, I'll say that. Here we're looking west down Truman Road. The alley, the property is obviously to your right there. You can see where the alley goes north from Truman Road, right where that 12 Missouri Highway sign is. And there's that yellow house. This is the property to the north of the applicant's property. You can see the applicant's yellow house there on the right. You can see the neighbors have a garage also in the same alley position. The applicant's garage will be closer to the house than this one. This is the property across the street, across North Pleasant from the applicant's house. It's a church. And these two pictures are two houses that are to the south, across Truman Road from the applicant's property. And the two houses there on the end, and maybe this third one there, are owned by the federal government as part of the Truman Home site. And the applicant is here to, actually the applicant's son is here to make a presentation.
Is that the old Jackson house?
Chairman, member of the boards, my name is Jeff Whitty. I'm Judy Whitty's grandson. Speaking here on behalf of her, she had to return back to Iowa to finish up the sale of her house that's up there, so she can wrap up that part of it up there. Basically, as Mr. Borders has indicated, we're looking for variance because of the size of the lot.
I think the microphone's off or something.
It's on green.
Nope, it's good, yep. Due to the size of the lot is only 53 feet wide. However, the variance states that we have to be 50 feet away, so there's literally no way to build a garage in that lot without some sort of variance to get it in there. She would really prefer to build a garage because this house has no off-street parking, and on-street parking, there's only really one spot right in front of her house before the no parking starts. So she really doesn't have anywhere to park or store her outdoor things. So that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer anything for you.
Any questions for that?
No question, just a comment that all I can look at is just an add to the area there. It's going to be a nice new garage, and it gives her a place where she can park her car.
Yep,
and
she plans to build it.
And so it's adding to our city, I think, is what I'm looking at.
She plans to build it in accordance with all the building codes. She plans to build it in a style matching the existing house and the existing neighborhood. She likes the old feel of the houses and everything, so our plan is to design it and build it in a very similar manner to everything that exists in the neighborhood already.
Any other questions for this gentleman? No?
Yeah, thank you.
Are there any calls on this one, Stuart?
No, sir, no calls on this.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor on this? Nobody's moving too quick, so
Well, we are virtual here. We did not receive any calls about anyone signing up to speak one way or the other, however.
okay.
And I don't show anybody on the screen that signed in.
Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Okay. Well, I guess we can close the public hearing on this one, have a discussion. It seems to meet all the criteria. And it's definitely unique situation.
It's gonna be an improvement to the city, for sure. And all the, as you said, all the criteria met.
That, and they're probably gonna have to deal with the Heritage Committee on this, aren't they?
I'm not sure that this property is actually in it's surrounded by a lot of the historic district, but I'm not sure that this property is actually in the historic district.
Okay. Well, what do you gentlemen think?
I think it's
Is there
slam dunk.
any discussion we need to have?
I think it's a very reasonable variance request.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree as well.
With the same setback as the house, so there shouldn't be any problem there.
I agree.
Okay. Well, do I have a motion and a second on this?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the variances submitted for 21-999-13.
I'll second that.
We've got a motion and a second. All right. Let's see. Aaron Crosley,
Yes.
Jack Lehman,
Yes.
Bob Jones,
Yes.
Roy Brown.
Yes.
I'm Tim Watkins, and I vote yes, too. Variance has been approved. Okay, next case. 21-999-14, Living Hope Restoration Church, seeking a variance for sign standards at 2425 and a half South Chrysler Avenue.
Yes, the city code section 14504 restricts the area, height, setback standards of a monument sign and the use of an electronic message center, EMCs, limiting their location, size, brightness, message, display times, and so forth. For the Living Hope Restoration Church to install an EMC on top of its existing monument sign, 4 variances is required. First, the maximum area of a monument sign is 32 square feet. With the EMC added as sought by the church, the total sign area would be 40.67, which requires a variance of 8.67 square feet. The height of a sign is limited to 6 foot in residential zoning district. With the EMC added to the sign will be 7.3 feet in height, a variance of 1.3 feet. Then the minimum setback along and front property line is 15 feet. The existing sign is only 5 feet from the property line of South Chrysler. As such, it's considered a legal non-conforming structure and can't be modified to increase its area or height. Thus, a setback variance of 10 feet is required. And then finally, electronic message centers are prohibited within 100 feet of a protected area if any part of the sign would be visible from the protected area. The church itself is within the protected area, and there's no way that the sign could be installed there without a variance being in the protected area and visible from the protected area. A couple of these variances that we've had that are on the list tonight are other churches have had the same issue. I can think of probably 2 or 3 on it in residential areas on 39th Street, another one on South Sterling. Over the last couple of years, it had the same issues as the church does. I'll go through the slides here. This shows the general location of the church property. It's south of 23rd Street, and it's on the east side of Chrysler. This is the property that the church owns. The little office building that you'll see here in a minute is this little O1 area here in front. The church owns basically the sort of a half lot here, and then the property is very deep and goes all the way back to the former railroad tracks. Again, we've got Chrysler on the west side of the property and other residential streets north and south of this site. This is the aerial with the property outlined in pink. Again, you can see the church sets back from the street at quite a distance. It has parking lot in front of it. And he showed the office building and the little cutout of the property there in front. Got residential houses to the north and south and to the west along Chrysler. This is the site plan that they provided. You can see the little detail there in the corner that will be shown on the next slide of where the sign is right now. You've got an access easement for the church to get to their building, which is in the back there. You've got a two-story frame house in the front part of the property. As you can see, the property runs very deep there. This is a detail of the sign location. As you can see, the sign's about 8 feet wide, and it's only 5 feet from the front property line. And this is a detail. It shows the sign as it is now, and then how far it sits back from the street, the curb line, and the front right-of-way line. And then the lower detail shows the existing sign and then the EMC added to the top of it. This is the sign as it appears now. That Jesus Christ, our living hope sign on the bottom will be removed as part of this, and they will place the EMC right on top of the main portion of the sign there. Here we're in the parking lot of the little office building that sits in front of their property, looking to the north, up Chrysler. Here we're across Chrysler, looking to the somewhat northeast at the applicant's property there, where you can see the driveway that goes back to their to the church building, and there's their sign on the left. Here we're looking to the southeast slightly, down Chrysler. You can see the sign and how much it is slightly above the traffic lanes there, and that's the office building that is in the southwest corner of not their property but of the site. Here we're looking to the somewhat northeast up Chrysler towards 23rd Street. Again, you can see the sign in the distance and what people will see more or less as they drive up and down Chrysler. This is the house that's immediately to the north of the property. The sign is off to the right slightly. These people's house actually face the street north of here, and they use a driveway off of Chrysler to access the back of the property. This is one of the two houses that are directly across the street from the site. And then there's the other one that's at the corner there of Chrysler, and I think that's 24th Terrace or something. I'm not sure exactly. And any questions, or I can go through those slides again and show anybody if you have any questions about it.
One quick question. So they're just adding
That's
an
correct.
EMC to the existing sign, correct?
That's right. We'll go back to that. You can see from this, the existing sign is the one that with the arrow on the bottom and the Church of Jesus Christ, and then the EMC is the colored panel on top of it.
Okay.
And that's what they're adding directly on top of the existing sign.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions for staff on this?
Were there any calls?
No, I didn't have any calls on this one either. And no one that showed up to speak.
Okay. Nobody else have any questions for staff on this? At this moment? No? Okay. Can we hear from the applicant, please?
Gentlemen, it's good to be with you. I'm the pastor of Living Hope Restoration Church and have been for this year. Been attending there for 3 years. I'm compelled to tell you before I begin that Mr. Borders has been more than a pleasure to deal with. And I've previously a banker in my career and dealt with many municipalities and did not always find that to be the case. So thank you. I appreciate him. I think the variances speak to themselves to a certain extent. You can ask me questions. Let me just tell you why we're doing this. We serve the neighborhood surrounding our church. Our church is set back off of Chrysler, as you noticed, and I've found in the last year that many of our neighbors don't even know that we are here. And we wanted to reach out to them with the message that we might have. For example, the City of Independence called me about 3 months ago and had an overabundance of food, milk, eggs, cheese, and wanted us to distribute some of it within our community. And in order to notify our neighbors that we had 2 truckloads of food, we literally went door to door with door knockers, if you will, and said, we've got food on Saturday, please come by, it's free. The reason we're doing this is simply to put an LED sign on top of our existing sign so that we can notify our neighbors of a food giveaway, we occasionally have barbecues and invite the neighbors. That's why we're doing this. We're trying to make our message clear to our neighbors. And it would be helpful in that regard. It's about 7 feet wide and 18 inches tall. The sign that we're looking at would have 2 lines of code, verbiage, if you will, either static or rolling, and I think there's an issue in the code with the rolling. Yeah, so it would be static. There's another issue, I think, with regard to the illumination. The sign that we're purchasing, as I understand it, has about 124 watts of illumination, but it has 10 different levels of illumination. 125 would be the top. We would anticipate using the sign. It can be programmed and turned off and on remotely. Our building manager would be able to turn it off, for example, at 9 or 10 o'clock in the evening, which we would do to satisfy the code. Turn it on in the morning to catch people going to work, turn it off in the evening when we don't need it any longer in the evening after 9 or 10 o'clock anyway. So that's essentially my message. I'll answer whatever questions you might have.
Any questions for the applicant?
So do you see that this would be a way of letting the neighbors know? For example, you could say, we have extra food available from
8
9
o'clock
till
till
7
noon in
or
the morning.
whatever.
Yes, sir.
So this is really, because it is difficult to know what's back there. When you drive by, you see that used to be a dental office and so forth out there in the
Yes.
front.
Yes.
So you really do have a hardship in a sense.
We have a communication problem. That's right.
Yeah, in other words, there is a practical difficulty or hardship by the property itself by virtue of the fact that your building is not readily seen.
Correct.
Even if you're looking for it, it's difficult to see.
Correct.
And so I imagine that this whole pandemic thing has not helped with your ability to function as a church. Is that true?
That is true. On 3 recent occasions, I've gone door to door to notify them of a barbecue or a cookout or a concert that we might be having. And I don't bother the neighbors, but if they're there, I'll speak to them. My experience has been many of the neighbors don't even know that church is there. And, that's a problem for us getting our message out.
I think it was about 2018 when we had our elections. Was it 20? Anyway, it doesn't matter. And I think they have voting back there, don't they?
Yes, we use.
And I
the
was
church
actually,
for
for a friend that was running for legislature, I was helping out, passing out ballots and stuff. And you're right, you can't, if you drive by there, you really don't even know it's there.
And you wouldn't know it was a church if you didn't know it
And
was there.
you use the gymnasium as your sanctuary, right?
Correct.
So I can see what, you could be a hardship here for you, for sure.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I have one more. We have to deal with these review criteria, the 6 of them.
Sure.
And you've answered a couple of them now. One of them I would want to have you comment upon is the alleged hardship has not been created by any person presently having interest in the property. Well, technically, would you say that even though you're the property owner, that the hardship is created by the fact that you can't be seen, and you can't reach the neighbors, and the neighbors need sometimes food or fellowship, and so would you say that would be?
That's our hardship.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? No? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this variance request? No? Okay. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to it? Okay. Well, any other questions for this gentleman before we close the public hearing? Okay. We'll close the public hearing at this time, have a discussion on this. And you did say no one called on this?
Right.
No, I've received no calls in this case.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of comments. If there were neighbors concerned for this, they were all notified, nobody called, I think that would have been, might have made a difference, but this seems like a very reasonable, I mean, I love seeing the fact that a church is trying to reach out into the community and not be cloistered in, so I think this is great. I'm prepared to make a motion if anybody, unless anybody else has any comments.
I agree with what you said.
Isn't this similar to that case that we had with the church on 39th Street a couple of years ago?
I think that,
They put an EMC on their new sign, or they put a new sign with an EMC
that's
in
right.
it?
I'm not sure they had all four of these, but they did have
Yeah,
two or
that's
three,
right.
I'm sure.
Unity Church or something?
It was between Nolan and Sterling, I believe, on the north side of the street.
Oh, I was thinking the one on, close to the fire station at 39th and, Phelps.
That's a Methodist church.
Yes.
Okay, I was thinking of a different one, but
Oh,
probably.
I mean, it's been a couple of years, 2, 3 maybe years ago, maybe more.
Yeah.
But I know we've had some issues with churches as far as wanting to update their signage and have had problems and requirement for variances. So, okay.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion that we approve the variance request as noted, all four of them, for case number 21-999-14.
I'll second it.
Okay. Before we go to a vote, is there any other questions, comments for the committee, for the board to discuss? No? Okay. Well, having a motion and a second, I guess we'll take it to a vote. Let's see, Aaron Crosley,
Yes.
Jack Lehman,
Yes.
Robert Jones,
Yes.
Roy Brown,
Yes.
I'm Tim Watkins, and I vote yes as well. The request has been approved. You're gonna need to deal with Stuart as far, and community development as far as how that EMC works, so.
Oh, man.
Be my pleasure.
Okay. Thank you.
Good luck to you. Okay, next case. 21-999-15, Jacob Hasty, is that correct? Okay. A variance pertaining to the residential fence standard for the property at 2702 South Windsor Avenue.
Yes, the city code states that front and side yards in residential districts except for fencing around bona fide agricultural activities. No fence or wall located in the front yard of a residence or along the side street in front of a residence shall exceed 3 feet in height. Such fence shall be at least 50% transparent and may include chain link, picket, wrought iron, and split rails. Fences or walls in street side yards not in front of a residence shall not exceed 6 feet without a permit or up to 8 feet with a fence permit. Mr. Hasty seeks to maintain a 6-foot privacy fence between the front of their house and the front property line along South Windsor Avenue. The fence encroaches roughly 36 feet into the front yard from the house. Here you can see your vicinity map shows the property on the, I guess you'd call it the southwest corner of this intersection. It's east of 23rd Street. It's actually not very far from the church that we just discussed. This is again, the site location. It's West 23rd Street. Chrysler is off to the left here. The house faces Windsor Avenue, 27th Street on the north. This is the aerial of the site. Again, 27th Street on the north and Windsor on the right, going north and south. That's the applicant's property there. It faces Windsor. So the side yard is to the north, and then the street side yard is to the north, and then the front exterior yard is to the east. And this is a residential neighborhood. There's just single-family homes and all lots around this property. Now, this is a illustration they provided that shows where they would like to have the fence. Some of the fence that was shown on here was there previously, and some of it is new. Most of the previous fence was down on the lower portion of the site on the southern end of the house and kind of extends along the back property line. It goes up from the back corner of the southwest corner up to the northwest corner and then across and then back down, as you can see, along the driveway. Now this slide shows the area that they need the variance for the fencing. All the black line on the behind the house and then on the south side and the north side of the house directly is fine for a 6-foot fence. However, where the red line is, which starts even with the house and goes to the east and then south and then back to the west, that is where they need the variance for. That's the fencing that's over 3 feet in front of the house. Here we're south of the house on Windsor, looking to the northwest. That's the applicant's house there. You can see where the fence projects out to the east from the house. That's a gate in the fence there. The 27th Street is to the right of the screen. Here, this is another one. We're looking somewhat to the southwest, again from Windsor. You can see the fence goes along the front property line, approximately where the front property line is. This is the intersection of Windsor and 27th Street. You can see the corner there, which is roughly the corner of their property. And you can see from the house there on the left and how much the fence projects out from the house. Here's another one that shows the view down West 27th Street. And here we're across the street on the north side of the street, looking due south at the fence line along the north property line of the applicant's site. You can see their house there in the background. And this is where northwest of their property, and this is the northwest corner of the fence. The rear property line runs along from that tree bush there that's in the corner to the right. That's the rear property line. And then running to the left from there is the north property line. This is the house that's immediately to the west of the applicant's property. You can see the fence line as it runs between the two properties there in the back. This is across the street on the north side of 27th Street, one of the couple of houses that are along there. Pretty typical for the neighborhood. Here's another one that's just directly south of that, east of that. Here we're looking to the east across Windsor to the east, and that's a house that faces 27th Street. And another one that is across the street from the applicant's house. And here we have a picture that shows as one would go north on Windsor, this is what they would see with the applicant's house, again there on the left, and this fence as it projects out from the house to the roughly the front property line, I'm guessing. So any questions on that? I know that the code, that part of the code is a little bit tough to read and understand, but I'd be happy to go over anything again if needed.
Any questions for Stuart on this one?
Is there any other homes around here that have this type of fence out in the yard as far as it goes? Or is
No,
it
not
typically-
really. There's some fences, there's some houses that are on corners, but the fence doesn't project in front of the house. This is kind of unusual in the house that sits back. And part of their issue is the house sits back from the front property line. So far, they only have 8 to 10 feet or something from the house to the rear property line. Normally, this house would have faced north, and the house would have been moved north, and then it would given them a rear yard from the house to the south property line. But for whatever reason, the house is built like this. They feel like they have no rear yard, and so they fenced in basically the property, that part of the yard that's north of the house.
Any other questions?
Would
Stuart?
you clarify on your drawing where you have the black and the red, the black is, what, the difference is the black is,
The black is as you can see on the screen here, the black is the area that is legal fencing.
that's
And
legal?
that's where they can put it legally without a variance.
Okay,
But then it transitioned to red just about the front edge of the house. If you go the northeast corner of the house, if you go due north,
okay.
that's where it transitioned into the area where the fence needs variance.
And that's because the house being set back, part of that is it's in the front yard, not in the side yard.
Well, it's in the street, yeah, in the exterior yard, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
We changed our code probably a year and a half ago, and we're more flexible on fences in exterior yards on the side of the house. But we kept the fences, no fences over 3 feet in front of the house, which is what the issue is with this. Had it come over from where it seemed with the house and come straight down, that would have been legal. But they projected the fence out past the house.
Anything else for Stuart?
I do. And I noticed that it says, and if you could explain a little bit more about, even if we approved variance, it would still have to be pared back because of visibility issues?
Well, I'm
Intersection
not the best one that can answer that. Our traffic engineer went out and looked at it, and he had a little concern with, as you go north on Windsor to the intersection. Here, let's see, I can go back here. Okay, if you go north on Windsor and stop at that intersection right there, his only concern was if you look to the left, look to the west, to see a car, if there's any traffic coming to the east down 27th Street, is there enough visibility there?
Okay.
And he was a little unsure and thought that, well, maybe if this did get approved, we should do a sight distance triangle situation, go out there and look at that.
Okay.
Somebody from Public Works, we have to go out there and take a look at that. But if the variance isn't approved and they have to pare the fence back, that's not necessary. But it may be fine. As you can see, it does look like it's set back from the road some.
Sure.
I don't know where the property line is in relationship to the fence.
Okay. Thank you.
Is it just along the driveway where it's 6 foot high? And then I guess, what is that, going north to the is that have to be 3 foot in there, or is that can be as high as it is?
No, it has to be 3 feet in there.
So in other words, there's two issues there, where it's along the driveway and then as it goes up towards the street, right?
Yeah, if you look at the aerial again here that's on the screen, you can see wherever it's red is where the area that they need variances for.
But if they went with 3 feet, it wouldn't be an issue.
That is correct.
Okay, anything else for
Yeah.
Stuart?
I don't know if this question is for you or for the homeowner, but what part of this fence was replaced that was pre-existing?
Well, I went back to the Google Earth from let me see. I did a Google Earth from August of 11, and there was no fence there. And then I did a Google from February of 19, and there was no fence there. So there could have been fence behind the house. I couldn't tell that from this, but there was no fence in this area at that time. The area that we're talking about.
Okay, anything else?
Have you had any
Staff.
people that have called or anything on this particular?
No, we haven't had anybody call on this one.
Anything else?
I can tell you that the applicant did, and I did not include in the packet, but the applicant did get some signatures and letters from some of the neighbors that were in favor of this application. And I apologize, I should have included that.
That's on the,
You said there were some that did not approve?
No, that they were in favor of it.
Oh, okay.
these are the ones we're talking about, yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, if there's nothing else for staff, the applicant would come forward and state your name and your address, and, well, make sure the microphone's working so we can hear you.
Good evening, members of the board. Before we start, I did have copies of signatures from my neighbors.
Is that microphone on?
Yes, yes it is. I can speak up if need be. But I did have signatures from my neighbors stating that the fence has actually benefited the neighborhood since it was erected. Basically, tonight, I'll just read my speech. I'm hard at this. Tonight, I will be asking for your understanding and allowance of the fence that was put up at 2702 Windsor. The fence was installed following an outline of a previous fence that had been sheared down and cut down before I had moved in. I had hired a contractor to build it back in early March. The contractor met with USIC to mark the yard, told me to check the codes, pulled the permits, and the fence should be no issue putting up. I gave him $5,000 he had asked for up front, and he began putting the post up in the easternmost wall, which is the wall where, I guess, the worst wall of them all, and was out of code. I then did not see this contractor for 2 months and began to finish the fence myself. Finally, the contractor did come back and demands more money to finish the job, and that's the time he pretty much told me that it was out of code. He told me that if I didn't proceed to give him more money, that he would report the fence that he built to the city. His wife is actually the one who reported this fence on me, and that's why I'm here today and why it's already up without me asking for your guys' approval first. There's a few points I was going to cover just in more detail so you guys could hopefully understand why I believe this fence is going to be beneficial for my community. First is really just the safety of my children. I have provided you guys a sheet that just showed you the amount of sex offenders in my area. With more than 100 within like a 1 mile to 2 mile stretch, it's just really hard for me to believe that a 3 foot, 50% transparent fence can really obstruct any of these sort of predators from my yard. Before the fence was put up in March, I was also picking up alcohol, beer bottles, needles, and other drug paraphernalia out of my yard. These are things that my daughters could easily grab, step on, or anything like that while playing. This debris or litter
has actually, and I got signatures on it, has effectively stopped since I have got this fence up. I believe that the difference between 3 foot and 6 foot is monumental when you're talking about this. An average person can climb a 3 foot fence. Not easy to do a 6 foot fence. It's clearly not safe to allow any. I don't think it's safe to be letting another child play footy in a 3 foot. Well, I already said that. If I were to follow the code of the fence, the area that is left, covered by a 6 foot privacy fence, would allow little to no room for my child to play or any play equipment that I would want to put back there. If I don't feel it's safe to play in that small of an area in my house, it's hard for me to want to push them outside without, again, the same sort of rules I'd keep indoors. And that's the whole point of my yard, in my opinion. Ultimately, my house is also only about 8 to 10 feet away from the neighbor's yard, which really creates a big issue with any sort of fencing that I do put up. My house and lot are unique in this regard, as it's sitting to one side of the property and has no real backyard. When built, this house, I believe, was clearly designed to utilize that side yard as its entertainment or backyard purposes. Prior to the fence, I've had to run people off the playset at night that I have out there, obviously without permission, which creates another homeowner's issue of my own that I need to worry about. The privacy fence, I believe, would help alleviate these concerns, as well as keep out any of these predators that might try to come into my yard. Next, it's the safety of the community itself. Since the installation of the fence, it actually has, like I said, slowed the debris, trash and all that that's been collecting in our neighborhood, including my neighbors' yards. I have lived at this address for about 6 years, and within that time, my car has actually been broken into within 4 different occasions. I've even had a man passed out in my yard with a needle in his arm still, with my car door open and drug paraphernalia, drugs all in my car. I did call the police, but he was long gone by the time they had any arrived at all. Obviously, I can't expect the police to be able to watch my house 24/7, but I do believe that this fence, if left, would be a major decrease or a major deterrent for any sort of crimes that might occur. I also have a problem with miscreants and drug pedestrians walking in our neighborhoods and up my yard and my street. It's actually one of the main reasons I was so eager to finally put this fence up. There's even been reports of other people in the neighborhood with their cars being stolen, broken into, as well as packages stolen and stuff like that. They have admitted that it has actually seemed to be a much better sort of community around once the fence was erected. There is also the safety of the community goes even further, just the miscreants though. It has also helped the traffic on the streets. The neighborhood has always had an issue at the intersection of 27th Street and Windsor Avenue. Before the fence, you would see cars racing down the street, schooling their tires as they turn, because they had a line of sight that they felt like they could see anything going on, and it was bad. I even have a report in one of my things here from a neighbor who has seen it several times where a car has driven through my yard to get to the next street. The fence does not truly, I don't believe, block the view of the intersection. There's a bush that's down there that does a little bit more than that. That's just not my property line, so there's nothing I can do about it. And I don't believe it's really that close to the road. If anything, I think it promotes more caution and safety for the people who need to stop at that stop sign anyways and adhere to the laws of the road. The fact that there's also an issue with the small link fence. 2 months ago, about 3 blocks from home on 25th Street, actually real close to that church, there was a small, 5-year-old child who had died in the middle of the road. He got ran over. When I drove by there, was a chain link fence in the backyard. I mean, nothing crazy, but that kind of got me thinking as well, if you can't see anything, if it's out of sight, it's out of mind for a child. And with a 6-foot fence, 50%, or 3-foot fence, 50% transparent, a kid can easily throw something over on accident or see outside of there and want to be outside of the fence. I believe that a 6-foot privacy fence doesn't make them see what's out there, but enjoy where they're at instead of trying to go and explore. And these are situations I believe I am avoiding, and the safety I'm creating by keeping the fence just the way it is. Lastly, I just wanted to explain why it truly is a unique situation to me. My house sits on that back of the property line. Both my neighbors are probably like 15 feet from me because they're right there on the back of their property lines too. I don't have a backyard, and my house was really built to utilize that side yard. It's the only place where there is any open space that does not block the view of my house as well. Since the house is so far back, a true up-to-date code fence would cut the yard into a third without any privacy. A fenced yard that size does not really offer much to play in, and if I was to cut it down to 3 and make it look nice, I would actually have to cut it back even further from where it could specify a 6-foot fence to be able to bring it out to where I need it to be. If I had not seen prior indicators in my yard, if I knew the codes well enough to not have trusted that contractor that I'd hired, and had agreed to trust that he'd already pulled the permits, if I wasn't so aware now of my neighborhood's dangers, I would have easily put the fence up in a different manner or possibly just considered moving in a different location. I have truly built kind of a bond with my community and my neighbors as I've had them kind of put their names out there with me. And I would like to kind of further strengthen that bond and that community feeling, which they all feel has been built with me and partially added to by the fence. That's really all I got.
Any questions for the applicant?
I have none.
I have a question. Would you clarify again how this fence helps the neighbors? You're saying that it helped with the traffic and that safety. Was there another reason that maybe I missed that you mentioned that, like, other neighborhood kids might want to come over and play where it's safe? I mean, I just wondered if you could clarify that.
I wish I had a better explanation. The uniqueness is just that I've had the experience of it being up for about 4 months now, that I've sort of seen the difference and know it now. Really what has changed is we don't have nearly as many people walking down our streets or trying to get into our cars as they have been. It's odd to say I don't know how that came to be, but before I even put this up, maybe weeks before, I was having issues, and my neighbors were coming out and saying things. I've asked them about this fence way before I put it up too. But since then, we just haven't seen these people walking about. They haven't been, like I said, the trash has been coming. I couldn't tell you exactly how the fence correlates to this, but I can say that since it's been erected, it's truly shown a difference to the community, like to all my neighbors and me.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this variance? Anybody online? No. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this variance? We're not sure on the line of sight situation. I mean,
Well, I think it would be a matter of, if the board approved the fence as it is, that you'd have to get a couple of people from municipal services come out there and do a line of sight check, and then anything that was in the sight triangle would have to be moved out of the sight triangle. And that's not really something the board has the authority to waiver.
right.
But we don't know that. You can see from, well, you can't really see from this photo, but you can see from the ones that were included that how far it's set back. And the traffic engineer was, had some concerns about it, but he wasn't, he didn't go out there and do any testing himself, other than he says you have to pull up further up to 27th Street than probably where the stop sign is located. So you have to pull a little bit past the stop sign so you can see both ways, or see to the west anyway. But that would be just something that the city would have to work with the property owner on. And it may be just cutting the corner off just a little bit or something.
Sir, do you have any trouble with people not following the speed limit? Because usually in those type of lots and where you're in that time, it's 25 miles an hour speed limit. I mean, but that doesn't mean people don't drive faster than that. Do you notice you say that's not as where they're trying to race up and down the street as they were before the fence?
Correct. 27th Street seems to be a good crossover street from Nolan to Chrysler for a lot of people. In a weird way, it cuts through, and so they'll take that back road, Santa Fe Trail, and then they'll cut through 27th Street real fast to get across to Chrysler. 45 plus sometimes. I mean, you can easily tell just the way they're driving. And I wanted to also mention, I do have pictures of the corner, the Article 1-17 sent some about 25 feet away from the triangle. I don't necessarily know where the triangle was, but I do know that my fence lies 27 feet from the corner of my lot.
Well, there's, what, 4 of these criteria that doesn't really meet.
Well, number 4 doesn't really necessarily apply, as Stuart said, because if we did approve this, that would be up to the traffic engineer, I assume. So,
Yeah, number 4 would,
I know this is, we're still open, it's still public, it's still open. When I first saw this, I thought, man, this is, you know, it seemed to stick out. But when I realized that, I can't believe the house was set that far back. I mean, who would do that? I mean, when was the house built? Do you know?
I actually do not know. I know it was probably early 1900. I think it was like 1930, 1940, maybe.
Yeah, so it's one of those sins of the past that we have to deal with. And I hate to see, I mean, as I listen to the testimony, I begin to change my attitude a little bit. That, you know, if the house were forward, where, in my opinion, it should have been, then we wouldn't really have that much of an issue here. And if there had been any neighbors that had complained, then I would have been more strong in my resolve to not want to approve this. But we see here this list of neighbors. Nobody's objecting. We see these neighbors that are in favor of it, and so I just. Do you want to address any of these points? Do you understand what we're talking about?
Well, most of my speech I felt like was the safety issue, which I felt like was point number 3 on there. The safety concerns were really my main point to the 6 foot versus the 3 foot. And I also, like I said, the traffic issue, you said number 4 is that one, but number 3, I still feel like it actually has created safety to traffic as well, as they should be adhering to that state laws anyways. But when you can't see as much, you actually are more cautious, you know? You're not gonna be like, oh, I can see all the way down Windsor Avenue. I'm just gonna keep gunning it, or I'm gonna gun it around this corner real fast. I feel like it has definitely, on number 3, it definitely is due to safety that it's, I mean, I'll have to look through my list again, 1 second.
Do you want to address that if the fence had just been in your north side yard, why that is not enough area to play? I mean, you want to address that issue? Because that is the number 4, the number 3 says fence could enclose a portion of the yard directly north of the house and still provide a safe play area for the children. Do you want to address that? Is that a large enough area? Is it, so I'm explain why you decided to move to the east.
And I actually had more pictures that I had brought with me. I wish I had known that I should have probably provided them much sooner. But when you're inside the enclosed area, I mean, the fence will take about a foot away from the yard itself. And then when you're talking about my shed there and then to the side yard, there's only about like a 12 or 15 foot square area that they can play in. Now, if I have to get rid of the trampoline, I'd have to get rid of the trampoline. That's fine. That's not your guys' thing. But the play set and all that, if I put any sort of play equipment back there, I've completely destroyed any sort of real running around or playing that my kids could do back there. And that's really what I'm trying to do, is just create a safe environment for them to be able to truly play in without having to worry from any outside sources.
Okay. I don't have any more questions.
Anybody else?
Okay, this site distance triangle, it says that in its present location, the fence affects the site triangle. Has anybody laid out where that site triangle actually encroaches on your fence?
No.
Well, I think they've got to tell you that, because it says that even if we approve this, that the fence is still gotta have that corner paired off.
If that's true, if I have to lower that to like 4 or 3 just in the corner, I mean, even that to me is enough safety, because it's gonna be hard for them to call over,
Sure.
run over a corner versus, you know, right in the middle with this 50% they can step on posts and stuff.
Right. Yeah, if the street had curved the other way or something coming up there, there wouldn't be a problem, but since the street does go straight down, then the site distance triangle is a problem. And they've got to show you where that is, if we approve this.
Correct.
If we approve it, that fence still has to be moved to meet the site distance requirement. Isn't
If,
that
like I
right?
said, I will follow any of the rules or things.
Some of it may need to be moved. I mean,
Yes,
it may have to
yes.
be trimmed back some, yes.
And so that hasn't been shown to us yet.
We don't know at this point, no.
Okay.
That wouldn't be our call. That would be the call of somebody from the city. If they say you need to cut a corner off,
Normally it'd be the traffic section of,
then you would have to do that, and that's not, excuse me, I didn't have my mic on. That's
Right.
not our concern, I don't think.
right,
Yeah, that falls under Public Works, or what they call municipal services now.
yes.
If they had to cut back some of that site distance or something with that, and you could leave the rest the way you have it, would that work okay for you as far as not taking out everything?
Yeah, if it's approved, I'm willing to work with the city with whatever needs to be done to make sure that the intersection
that's
is at
what it
least
says.
safe.
Okay.
And
That
that- 'cause-
site distance triangle has to be taken care of.
Okay. So the same. Okay with that.
Anything else?
Hey,
Okay.
Tim, do we have to wait until the city has done what they have to do in order for us to,
No, I think they're waiting on us.
so we can go ahead and approve it? and if we want
We're
to,
the ones they're waiting
But then
on.
they-
If we approve it, then they will go out and actually do,
And then
How much fence has to be moved?
well, if any, but yes, and it could be a small amount, could be a bunch of it, depending on what they come up with when they do that line of sight triangle.
but you,
Which of course is a public safety issue and takes precedence over what we,
Exactly.
so,
So, we don't know. I mean, if we,
well, on that, we don't. Or there, you know, you can speculate, but until
No,
they
we
get
have
out
to-
there and do what they do, that they won't even know.
Right.
So, you know, that's a contingency thing there. As far as, if we can approve the way it sits, but what they come up with trumps, you know, whatever we say, you know, as far as a public safety issue. So, I know line of sight issues have been things that we've run into before on privacy fences.
Well, it's critical.
Especially on corner lots.
Yeah, it's critical.
And it's, you know, I used to run into it all the time in the fence business years ago. It was just one of those things. So, heck, people do it with bushes, trees now. You know, I mean, they create a real line of sight issue when you pull up to a stop sign, and of course, you know, yeah,
The highway
everybody
department,
likes it,
yeah.
but,
Yeah, the highway department, like bushes, will be 30 inches high
right,
if they're in that sight distance triangle.
exactly. So,
is that something we have to put in the?
no,
we approve
that's
it?
not something we need to add. That's
don't have
just
to.
something they will address if we approve.
Yes.
But they
So-
still are, they will still make a check on it. It does have to be moved,
And that,
and they will move it, is
And
that what
he's-
you're saying?
Yeah, he doesn't have any choice. He's gonna move the fence.
well, I'm pretty sure that's one of the reasons they went with the 3-foot semi-transparent fence in the front yards, was to help eliminate that problem. And I understand what he's saying as far as what he's wanting, you know, but,
The
you know,
3-foot,
that was the reason they went with that, was
Yeah, right.
because
That makes sense.
line of sight issues, and it eliminates a lot of that.
3-foot fence isn't even protection against a dog.
No, well, 3-foot fence, it's not any taller than the bottom of your car window when you're sitting in your vehicle, so
Right.
of course it's not gonna be an issue. Unless you're in a really short car. Okay, anything else on this?
Have we closed the public session? Or is this our
Well,
conversation now?
I'm just waiting to make sure there aren't any other
Okay.
questions before we close the public
Okay.
hearing. Anything else, Roy?
I
Before
could
we
always
close the public hearing?
come up with something, but I think I've said enough.
Aaron? Anything before we close?
I,
Bob?
I don't, not that I'm aware of, I mean, I don't, it's kind of a,
Jack?
He's got a safety issue for his kids, and I can understand that. And he's at the intersection of two streets, which makes it even more critical.
it's
Yeah.
a corner lot.
I was going to say this when we closed the public hearing, but I'll go ahead and say it now. I think we are potentially setting a precedent by this, but I think it needs to be made clear that the precedent, if this comes up again, and the house is on the setback line, it doesn't apply the same as this does, because the house is way behind the setback line. So I think that, I just wanted to make that point.
I agree.
Well, then I guess we can close the public hearing and have a discussion on this.
Yeah.
Okay. We've got some criteria that needs to be met before we can approve this thing. I think it was number 4 is the one that I think you mentioned, Roy,
Right.
as far as
I think number
we don't
4
really
was,
know yet on that one.
yeah, I don't think that has anything to do with us. I mean, that's just there.
But we still have number 3, number 5, and number 6. Well, number one is,
Yes and no.
Well, he
yeah, we can flip a coin on it.
kind of
Right.
answered number 3 when he explained that, you know, you could see in the area of that trampoline and so forth, that there really is very little play area if he were just to enclose the north portion of the yard from his testimony, that it's, and I would tend to agree that that's, I mean, we've all had kids and grandkids, and I don't know, Bob, you have great grandkids yet? I don't know. But I think that maybe would answer number 3. And number 5 is always a problem. The hardship has not been created by any person presently having an interest in the property. Well, I'm a rationalizer, I guess, but I would say that it's not his fault that the house was put where it was and there's no backyard. I mean, I can't believe that. I haven't seen that very much. So to me, that would answer number 5. I think number 6 is that it is changing the character of the neighborhood, but you know, how do we answer that? He's setting a precedent. Others may be putting up fences, and that would be in line with the character of the neighborhood in the future. They would, you know, if the house is where it should be and it's in the side yard and it's a 6-foot fence, and that, you know, I just visualize if the house were forward where it should be, then it hasn't changed the character of the neighborhood. That's the way I look at it. But then I always think outside the box. You guys need to bring me down to earth.
I used to live in the neighborhood across from Chrysler, and so my wife and I and our son would take walks over there, and I was over that direction visiting. I still have friends over there, and so I drove by, and it is, in my mind, it is a lot of fence in out of keeping with the neighborhood. And I know some neighbors have been on board with it, but I think it sets a precedent too. Like, do we want to live in an independence where everybody has a tall privacy fence out like a castle around their front yard? So in my mind, it does alter quite a bit that the neighborhood of, and you know, a lot of them do have like nice long big open yards, and so in my opinion, it does cut that out and changes kind of the character of the neighborhood.
Bob, what do you think?
Oh, I think it's a tough one. I can see where the homeowner's problem is there but by the same token, it does change the character somewhat of the neighborhood when you have high fences where normally you don't see that sort of thing. So I can empathize with him with his kids and all, where a 3-foot fence is not going to do it, right?
No.
So between a rock and a hard place, is that what this is?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the bottom line for all commissions is that we need to seek the highest and best public good, and so that maybe is a overriding question. Is you know, if we know there's a lot of child trafficking going on now. That wasn't the case when some of these ordinances were put in place, and I think that we need to consider that as an item too. And I imagine the day might come when some of these ordinances would change to reflect the child trafficking. It's horrible. Mm-hmm. If you look at the statistics.
Yeah, it's bad.
So.
Jack?
It looks like that if any place in that side yard that he would want to put that no matter where it is, we'd have to approve something to let him even put a fence up at all. And he's got all that yard, and it's his, and there should be some accommodation.
Yeah, it's not one that's.
Well, he is allowed from the front of the house back to come out on that side.
Oh, it has to
It's
be
what's
from
in front of the
back.
house that is the issue. So he's not out too far towards the street.
Right.
He's just too far towards, well, the side street, he's not too far towards it. He's too far towards, or past the front of the primary structure.
Sure.
So, I mean, he could still have a fenced area with a 6-foot privacy fence. It's what's sticking out past the front of the home that is requiring the variance. The rest of it is fine.
Right.
If,
So,
if he were to build an addition on the east side of his house that followed the codes, followed the setbacks, then this fence, other than it being 6 feet, well, no, it would still be a side yard fence. And so this might go away, except, would it? Maybe, yeah, it's only the partially translucent aspects of the fence is when it's in the front, not when it's in the side. So if his house were to come forward with an addition, then we wouldn't be here. So to me, that's kind of a technicality. And again, I'm just trying to think in the overall scheme of things so that we don't get get in trouble down the road.
right. I mean, that's this one's just a tough one. It really is. I mean, you see both sides of the issue on this one. And yes, you hate to set precedents because they can come back and bite us in the future. So, I don't know. This one's a rough one.
If any neighbors had complained, I would probably vote no. But we don't have that.
Right.
That's,
So I'm inclined to vote yes, but not a real strong yes, but there's no gray areas, yes or no.
Yeah, well, right now, we have no neighbors in opposition to this. Apparently, the vast majority of them seem supportive.
Which is unusual. We don't normally get
Which-
that kind of support.
This is true. I mean, usually there's very little said. Or there's somebody in opposition. You might have one or two in favor, but, right now, we're experiencing an oddity all the way around on this one. So,
well, I kind of agree with Roy there on what he's saying, though. If there's nobody here that's opposing it, I mean, if there's a room full of people opposing it, then that's a no-brainer. But
Right.
if you don't have any opposition in this council chambers, then you go, I mean, it's not a, what do you call a black and white issue, is it?
it's definitely not a simple one.
Well, that would pretty well covered in number 2. It's not expected to adversely affect the adjacent property owners.
That's a good point.
That's, yeah, I mean, number 2 is.
That kind of balances out some of the other things.
Yeah, that's true, number 2.
else?
I can't think of anything. Everything's been covered. Well, at least I can think of.
Head scratching time?
Yeah. But that is a valid point, what you said, Roy, is that part of number two, yes, because there's nobody here that's opposing it. If it was an issue in the neighborhood, it would seem like to me there'd be people here that would. Right?
Well, that's a point right there. Okay. Anybody else? Any other discussion on this that we need to have? Have we met all the criteria? And if not, which ones have we not met? And
Right.
Well, I think in our lengthy discussions, we've established that we have met the criteria fully or partially, more than 50%. Since we're not really looking at 4, and 2 is a strong one,
It's,
we've really discussed, we've kind of almost beat this horse to death, if that's probably not a good term to use anymore. For PETA. Let's beat a dead horse, whatever that is, I don't know.
I saw this when I saw the application. This could be.
anybody want to move on this thing? I don't know if any more discussion is really going to make it any easier. Unless somebody has a
Well, the board,
light bulb going off.
the board does have an option to approve a variance that's somewhere between what he has now and what the code requires. I mean, it may cause him to rebuild some of the fence, but it would give him an option. I mean, it would give you an option to, I think it's suggested that, he could trim the fence back to where it would be even with the house, or perhaps somewhere in between the front line of the house where it is now. Something along those lines as well.
Yeah,
Is that possible? We can do that?
The board has the authority to do things like this when they feel that it meets the, the
done things like that.
health, safety, welfare, and, they have some authority to grant conditions on.
Do we have to list that thing?
You would have to
In
put
our
it as
approval
part, it
part?
would have to be part of your motion and second and approval.
Well, I think that's probably about all.
But you have to come to a decision what you want.
Right.
Well, I suppose we could, I don't know if it's 8 foot on center, what are your posts?
8 foot on center, should be.
So if we were to say, okay, take out, since he may have to change the corner anyway, that maybe we say he's to move, I don't know. We could say that.
Bring it back 8
Bring
feet.
it back 8 feet, which is a little bit of a compromise, but still, that's a lot of work. You were the fence guy.
Well, you're gonna have to, if you bring it back 8 feet,
That could take care of the site distance triangle.
right, but if you bring it back 8 feet, all the posts along the front would have to be pulled
Yeah,
up and then reset
and that's a,
in that 8-foot area.
if they're in concrete, that's gonna be a real pain, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it's no fun. I mean, you'd have to break the concrete loose around the post, either that or you take and you set new posts and you just cut those off, but you gotta make sure they're flush, otherwise they're a trip hazard. You don't want some little kid running along tripping over a fence post, sticking
So
up
it's-
an inch out of the ground.
It's still gonna have the same effect, I mean.
But as far as, he can reuse the panels on something like that. Then it would actually give him 2 extras. Yeah, there's gonna be some effort goes into it.
It's gonna cost him some money, that's for sure.
I suppose another compromise might be opening up a panel in the front, putting in chain link fence or something like that, but that, you lose the privacy, but
Right, well, yeah, you're definitely gonna lose that. That'd be even more work,
yeah, that's,
all reality.
just looking at all the options. Um, Even if we approve this, staff still has to love us.
Yeah.
Well,
Maybe not.
The other thing is, we could say that this fence only goes with the property with the current owner.
Yeah.
We could say that.
Good.
Well, I don't know that you
That'd be
can say
hard
that.
Is
to
that legal?
prove and.
I don't
and
know that's
follow up
even
on.
enforceable, so no, that's not an
Well,
option.
do we have a lawyer in the house?
No, not right now.
We, yeah, I think that's opening up a whole can of worms.
Well, this is already a can of
It's
worms.
a no-win situation on that one.
Well, I guess we need to do something.
But how many, you know how many feet that is currently from the house out,
I think it's around 50 feet
sticking forward?
from the front wall of the house out toward the street. I think
Oh,
so.
no, I meant the fence. Where the fence sits, how many feet does it sit out from the house right now?
Well, I think somewhere around 50 feet.
Really?
I don't,
I measured it was 35.
Okay.
oh, okay.
It says it encroaches into the front yard about 36 feet.
Okay, 36, I'm sorry,
Okay.
about 36.
So you really wouldn't be losing all that much if you only took 8 feet off.
Yeah.
And I think reducing it back 8 feet, there would, more than likely, he's not gonna run into any line of sight issues with that.
Yeah. Well, it's a pain, but that
This
would
whole
be
thing's been a pain
better
for
than.
this guy. He had a contractor that shafted him and then got him into this quagmire. And then you'd have to give him a time to be able to do it. To come into compliance with the variance, isn't that correct?
Usually they get like 30 days or something like that to take care of that.
Are the posts set in concrete? Okay, I'm gonna be the, something has to happen.
Yeah, we gotta do something.
I'm just gonna recommend that we approve case number 21-999-15 as presented. And maybe with the caveat that only because the house is farther back than it should have been. I mean, the main reason being because the house was set farther back than normally it would have been. Should I rephrase that? I'm going to move approval of this case based on our conversations.
Have to do the right, what do you call it, the wording or the English. Put it down on
Mr.
paper.
Jones, you're going to have to speak into the microphone.
I guess you'd have to figure out a way to put it down on paper of what you want to do. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm just,
Yeah, he made a motion to approve as presented.
yeah.
Do we have a
And it goes
second?
without saying, that's based on all of our conversations that we've had. And the evidence that was presented to us. I mean, that goes without saying. That's what we do.
A second.
Do we have a second on this?
I second.
You just make a second? Okay.
You second?
Aaron made a second. So I guess we'll vote. All right. Aaron Crosley,
No.
Jack Lehman,
No.
Robert Jones,
No.
Roy Brown.
Yes?
I'm Tim Watkins, and I vote no as well. So,
Can we make another motion? How's that work?
I don't know if you can do that after we've had a vote, can you?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
Can there be an amendment to the motion? What about straw vote? I mean,
Yeah.
Can?
I don't think according
Cannot.
to Robert's rules, yeah.
so if we moved it 8 feet, would that make a difference?
Well, we can't do that, though,
Can't?
since we took it to a vote.
Yeah. He'd have to bring it back.
It's what?
So the case is essentially closed and done at that point, right? I mean,
Reapply?
it's the dead horse thing again. Yeah,
Come back again.
we should have done it before we took it to a vote.
Can we table it?
No, you can't table it, it's
No, you can't now.
closed case, it's done. That's the problem we should have done before we went to a vote, should have had whatever, as far as an amendment to or changing it.
There's no way that can be.
Has to reapply or something, I don't know, this guy.
You'd have to reapply, apparently.
Huh?
He would have to
So
reapply.
what happens in the meantime?
Yeah.
If he reapplies, he has how long, 6 months? When is that, when can he reapply?
Hang on just a minute.
Jesus, this is just a nightmare. We should have just tabled it.
Did you second the motion? After you make a motion, there's supposed to be, is there any more discussion before you vote? After I made the motion, did you say, is there any more discussion before we vote? Isn't that, you did say that. If we took it back 8 feet, we could go to the vote. Would you?
Well, I don't really see anything in the ordinance about that. I'll have to do some research and get back to you.
Okay.
Now, regular zoning issues, they do have to wait a year, cooling off period, so to speak. But this is not a rezoning or a special use permit.
All right. Everybody have a chance to review the minutes from the last meeting? Anything that needs to be changed? Everything will look right? Okay.
I make a motion, we approve the minutes as presented.
Okay. We got a motion. We got a second?
A second.
All right. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Nope. Okay. This meeting is adjourned.